Welcome in. It's the 3D Dynasty podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and we're brought to you by Bird Dog Shorts. Dominate summer with an amazing pair of shorts and a free Yeti-style tumbler when you order over at birddogs.com/pool. That's birddogs.com/pool. Welcome into the show. There's my guy back with us this week, Brad. We're going to talk about the NFC West. And we've already talked about all of the AFC. We've covered a little bit of the NFC, the North and the East. Go check out those episodes on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. You can also check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, if this is your first time, hit that subscriber button. Brought to you by Jakey. And Brad, with the NFC West, we got the updated projections from Mike Clay. So we're going to just start off with a recap of the Arizona Cardinals offseason, and it's been an interesting one. So in the draft, they traded back. They got Paris Johnson. They traded back, then they traded up. But they got Paris Johnson. They also got the Houston Texans first-round pick next year, which might be the most valuable piece that they picked up in the draft. Don't forget about those when you put your draft together. Say, this is what I drafted. I also got a second and a third and a future first. They got B.J. Ojulari in the second round. They thought that was a good pick, PFF. Garrett Williams, a corner, coming off of an ACL injury. This is a team that can wait. This is a guy that probably was a second-round pick if he didn't have that borderline first-round pick. But he had a torn ACL. He's coming off of that. This was an above-average pick per PFF. Then Michael Wilson. Another guy that this is a bit of a gamble, but he had a great Senior Bowl. He was a very productive when he was healthy on the field. This guy is a big receiver to go with all these little guys on this Cardinals offense. John Gaines, personal favorite. I don't know if you've seen my video. This guy answered my question at the Combine, gave me goosebumps. I'm absolutely a huge fan and sad my Giants didn't get him. But this guy, I'll tell you guys later about it. Clayton Tune, quarterback, another one of my guys. Then they had Owen Papo. Then they had Kytrell Clark, a corner. Owen Papo was a linebacker, Clayton Tune, quarterback. And then Dante Stills, they got an A+ from PFF. And then as far as their offseason, they've been very busy. Got a B from PFF. They added Chris Barnes, linebacker. Offensive tackle, Jackson Barton. Cornerback, Chris Boyd. LJ Collier, edge from the Seattle Seahawks. You have Dennis Daly, offensive tackle. Jeff Driscoll, corner/tight end. He plays a little bit of both. You got Rashad Fenton, cornerback. Yeah, Hijate Frohold, guard. Hayden Hoverton, guard. Javante Moffitt, safety. Zach Pascal, receiver. Kevin Strong, you have D lineman. Carlos Watkins, D lineman. Kaiser White, linebacker, comes over with the coaching changes. They brought in all new coaches with Jonathan Gannon coming in. A little bit of a Michael Scott, sketchy kind of an interaction with Rondale Moore. If you want to laugh, look it up. You can look at the short video I put up on SGPN Fantasy Football YouTube. Elijah Wilkinson, tackle. Josh Woods, linebacker. So, Brad, what are your thoughts about the Cardinals' offseason?
I think they did good, and I think, like you said, the biggest thing is going to be that 24 first, and I think part of the reason is what are they going to be doing with the future of Kyler Murray? Are they going to be looking to try to move on from him, even though he's got that deal? It's a very interesting situation, new coaching staff, quite possibly a pretty early first-round pick moving in, and does Jonathan Gannon like what he sees from Kyler Murray when he comes back off of that ACL injury and hopefully looks like himself? That 24 first is the big deal, and I think the sleeper for them is going to be that Michael Wilson pick on the offensive side of the ball. He, like you said, he's the biggest guy they've got in that wide receiver room right now. And he's a guy that can be that possession style receiver for them that they really don't have. They've got a Rondale Moore, more that, juke play kind of, trick play kind of guy, get him the ball in space and let him work. Marquise Brown, a little bit more of that deep threat. And then there's nothing. You got Greg Dortch, who showed some flashes last season, given the opportunity. Zach Pascal coming in. We've seen flashes from him, but it's a very unproven back end of that. Really, anybody below Hollywood Brown is pretty open. So Michael Wilson, as we get through the projections, I think is a player that you might want to take a look at in your deeper dynasty leagues.
Yeah, and so before we get into that, Brad, you got something for us?
Hey, look, it's summertime. Training camp is right around the corner, and we're just waiting to see guys like A.J. Dillon and Saquon Barkley, maybe some Nick Chubb, some of these 650-pound squats that these guys are doing. And the reason that I bring it up is because of bird dogs. And bird dogs just make them thighs look good. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as the Lululemons, but they fit way better. They fit better than regular shorts, and they're made of stiff, restricting cotton. They fixed this issue by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but it stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice that movement. So Bird Dogs also uses an anti-stink or sweat. Look, it's summertime. Nobody likes ball sweat. Nobody likes that smell. They've got this very nice anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, I know Dave's got some. I know I got some. You want to go to birddogs.com/pool, Pool, and enter our promo code POOL, Pool, for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, that's birddogs.com/pool for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. I promise you.
If you don't know what Lululemons are, it's a brand. It's actually Jim Harbaugh's preference for the khakis. Little known fact. It's also probably that girl that you saw that said, "Man, those some nice yoga pants." It's probably Lululemons. So you want to look that good, to where you've seen Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He must work out. You want that? You want Brad saying that to you?
Oh man, that's a great reference.
There you go. So Kyler Murray, this is interesting because it has him down for 10 games. Colt McCoy for 7. Nobody else. Maybe Clayton Tune. I'll be honest, Brad. I look at this and I just don't see any reason why they put him in any harm's way. The Cardinals are likely to have him start off on the PUP, means that he's probably not going to be available until week 7, 8, or 9. And at that point, they're probably going to already be out of it, if not very close. This is one of the worst rosters in football. A lot of changes. And again, they got their first-round pick. They got the Houston Texans first-round pick. A lot of motivation to just go all in for next year. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. If they wanted to move on from Kyler Murray, they could sit there and try to take Caleb Williams or another quarterback and try to move Kyler Murray for more picks. Just makes no sense at all to put him in any harm's way at the end of this season, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you can kind of see, based on what they did in the offseason, they didn't go out and sign a big running back. They didn't go out and sign a wide receiver. They let DeAndre Hopkins go. They didn't really address the offense a ton in the offseason. So it looks to me like they say, hey, look, we recognize Jonathan Gannon in your first season. We need you to figure out what our roster players of the future look like. Is it going to be Kyler? Do we like Marquise Brown, or do we need to address that? Can Trey McBride be a guy that we can depend on in the future? And they're going to be looking more to that 2024 season. It would make a ton of sense to me with Kyler Murray coming, even if he doesn't start on the PUP. They're going to ease him into action, right? I know he's looking like he's starting to be in a pretty good spot and possibly be ready for week 1. There are reports kind of conflicting right now in that regard. I just don't see the reason why this roster is not good enough to put him in that harm's way like you talked about. So I think you're going to see the Arizona Cardinals kind of struggle throughout the season as they're working through what the roster, what players they want to maintain on the roster for next year.
Yeah, and with this, I think Kyler Murray is a great target if you are a rebuilding team. If you're a team that's looking towards the future, he's a young quarterback. I know there's some concern with the knee injury, especially with a running quarterback. We've seen it before. He's young. The ACL injuries aren't the way they used to be, and he's still a very good passer on top of his rushing upside. And this team could easily get one of the top receivers, if not a couple top weapons next year, including offensive line help. So I would definitely look at Kyler Murray as someone to target if I'm a rebuilding team. If you're a competing team, it's going to be very hard to go in and go after Kyler Murray. But a rebuilding team, you say, okay, I'm going to give you this player. I'm going to get a draft pick plus Kyler Murray, or I'm going to give you, Kyler Murray for a mid to late 2023 first. Go ahead and just kick the tires till next year. It's going to help you with your tanking and increase your draft capital next year on top of getting Kyler Murray next year.
Does the timing matter to you on when you're going to try to acquire Kyler? Is that something you're looking to do now? Because to me, I'm looking at almost like that mid-season. He comes back. He's likely not going to look like himself, especially with this roster. So do you try to buy that low in season, or do you try to do it right now? When do you think the price is going to be the deepest?
I think the price will probably be the deepest in the middle of the season. But I always just say, just check it out.
Yep.
I mean, if you get a good price right now, because your draft is going on right now and people are excited about 2023 picks, do it now. But you don't want to do it after your draft. And let's say you're trying to trade Zay Flowers for Kyler Murray, and Zay Flowers isn't doing jack. That 110, 111 would have been more valuable at that time. So that's where I'm at. I just go check it out. Let's go to the running backs. James Conner. A lot of discussion on Twitter about James Conner, especially his redraft value or looking at 1 year window value. And I feel like a lot of people are just based.
All right, so we officially did lose Dave in there. I couldn't tell whether that was me or him. I didn't want to try talking over him. But hey, look, we were talking about James Conner and kind of where he is in the team right now. And to me, these projections seem a little bit low. There is nobody that is really challenging James Conner right now for really any carries or any receiving at all. This dude is getting all of the work, which is exactly what you want. And when you think about, look, he's on a pretty good deal. He's at least got this year, probably next year as well. And he's coming off the board as RB40. You mean to tell me I can get a guy who's going to touch the ball 250 plus times at the RB40 spot and likely have him for a couple seasons? I am totally okay with that. He looked really, really good the last couple seasons with the Arizona Cardinals when healthy and when he was able to play. It absolutely is a smash play to me from a perspective of being able to get late round running back value. And that's what I'm looking for in James Conner. There's really nobody else on this roster from a running back perspective that I'm even remotely looking at in a dynasty perspective if I do not own James Conner. If I am the James Conner owner, then I'm looking to go grab a Keontae Ingram or a Corey Clement if you think that's the backup. And you can kind of see here that Mike Clay's kind of hedging his bet. Which one of these guys is going to be the backup to James Conner? But if I do not own James Conner, I'm not wasting a roster spot on any of these backup running backs because I don't really expect the Arizona Cardinals to be putting up enough points and moving the ball enough because of the injury with Kyler Murray and the rest of the team to really warrant having that roster spot taken up with one of these backups that we hope happens. So let's move on to the wide receiver position. And you can see here, Marquise Hollywood-Brown is kind of the alpha in the offense right now. They expect him to be the guy that's going out and getting the majority of the targets, and that makes the most sense. He is clearly the most talented wide receiver on this team in general, and it's really not even close. Hollywood was a top 12 wide receiver in the weeks while DeAndre Hopkins was out at the beginning of the season due to suspension with Kyler Murray. They traded a first-round pick to bring in Hollywood-Brown, and they gave him a deal, and I think he's just going to be a smash play for you at price. Again, the cost is there for him. So let's take a look at, let me see what his ADP is. Hollywood-Brown in Dynasty leagues is the wide receiver 31. So you're getting the opportunity to get the number one dog in an offense who has big playability at the wide receiver 31, a guy who's getting 120 plus targets. And I think that's on the low end. I just don't see Rondale Moore pulling in and garnering 100 targets. I just don't think it's going to happen. So Dave, you're back. We probably had about a 30-second delay because I was like, I don't know if it's me or if it's Dave. So we kind of held off. And then when it kicked you off, I picked up. We talked about James Conner. So I'll kick it back to you real quick. If there's anything you want to talk about at the running back position, otherwise, where do you stand with Hollywood-Brown?
Well, I'll just say this. Keontae Ingram is a very good stash. If you can get him off your waiver wires, 4th-round pick. Brad probably doesn't like him.
What I said is, unless I'm the James Conner owner, I'm not really interested in rostering any of them. That's kind of where my head's at.
Keontae Ingram's free. That's where it comes down to. I do like the player. And last year in the time that he played, he looked really good. He was very explosive. He could be a good player. I mean, this new offense, you could see things shuffled up. I just don't think Corey Clement or Tyson Williams has any value. Keontae Ingram is one. You don't want something to happen where James Conner goes down week 1 and Keontae Ingram's, was sitting on the waiver wire and you kept, Ben Skoranek and didn't make the move. So, and then another thing I want to talk about is Underdog Fantasy. We're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. If you've not heard of it, then you must be living under a rock. Best Ball Mania 4 is here, and we're Underdog. And that's where Underdog Fantasy is giving away $15 million in prizes. Yeah, $15 million in prizes. Underdog Pick'em is also a great way to get down on favorite MLB and NFL season player props. So many ways to win over Underdog, and Underdog is available in so many states. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. And answer the question about Marquise Brown. It's just going to be hard. I mean, you can go back and look at the splits last year with Colt McCoy. He did okay. But, you're kind of buying him at his ceiling with Colt McCoy. I mean, there's not a lot of upside with an offense led by Colt McCoy. And so if he's coming off the board as wide receiver 3 territory, then you're probably okay. But wide receiver 27, there's just so many good receivers. He might be a guy that you wait till the middle of the season and he's stinking it up and go pick him up as far as a buy low candidate. And I wouldn't be surprised if they checked Clayton Tune out if they, liked him in camp or anything like that. Because it's going to be a very much let's see what this roster looks like and let's see who's going to be our team moving forward. Teams tank, organizations tank, but the players don't. These guys are playing for jobs, so they'll play hard. And these guys are trying to make rosters, and they're also trying to make rosters next year. So you can see a guy, but if he gets the opportunity, you could see, Marquise Brown being someone that you can buy low on. Then next year, he should be on this roster next year. He's also in a contract year too.
That's right. And there's no way. I find it hard to believe that they move a first-round pick to bring this guy in and not let DeAndre Hopkins walk and do not figure out how to re-sign him. It's like I said before you jump back on, this dude was a top 12 wide receiver with Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins on suspension at the first 5 or 6 games of the season. So when I look at that, you see the potential. I do think there's upside with Marquise Brown in the long term. He's still a very young guy from a football standpoint at the wide receiver position, and I just think the upside is there. You're just going to have to wait likely a year to see it kind of come to fruition. So,
and then Trey McBride down there at the tight ends. I think he's an interesting buy low candidate. We just talked about him on our show with Eric Moody, actually with Michael F. Florio, and so McBride was a very productive receiving tight end in college. And last year he was behind Zach Ertz, and then some other things happened. And so he only got on the field once, and he had a really bad PFF score. And so people were like, I'm done with him. And like, that's fine. But if that's how you play Dynasty fantasy football, your teams are probably a hot mess, and you probably quit a whole bunch of leagues. Like, you have to be patient with these players. Like, not every player is going to go out there and dominate week one. And I don't even know the circumstance. He probably had Colt McCoy and the worst offensive line in football. Like, let's
might be
relax.
An understatement.
Let's relax, And so if a player is good, that's great. But you want to let me see 3 or 4 weeks before I make a real evaluation on it. And if he stinks, let me see 3 or 4 weeks. If he stinks for 3 or 4 weeks, then you might stink. But I'm not evaluating a guy on 1 week.
No, and just think about it, right? We've talked about how it just looks like Jonathan Gannon is going to see what this roster looks like for the future. Trey McBride is going to get a ton of opportunity in this offense because they spent a pretty decent draft capital on the guy. He's a very athletic tight end, and they don't really have other options. So look, we talked a little bit about the wide receivers before you hop back on. I said, I don't think Rondale Moore's getting 100 targets. It would not shock me if Trey McBride is the second leading target guy on this team behind Marquise Brown. I just don't know that there is another challenger for him right now. So I think he's a sneaky buy, just like you said. I love it. And before we move on to the next team, because you moved through, I got a question. Those deep dynasty leagues, we saw Greg Dortch be pretty solid from a fantasy perspective early on in the season for us. He had more targets. He had more receptions. He had more route participation than anybody else on the team. Is he a guy that you're willing to stash in a very ambiguous wide receiver room and kind of see what happens?
It just depends on how deep your rosters are. I'm in a league with you the other day, and I had to make decisions on dropping a couple guys, and I had to drop Dortch. It's just all about your situation. Again, he's a stash or trash guy, and you could stash him, but do you have a 35-player bench or a 30-player bench or a 25-player bench? And so I think his upside's really limited. I think this team's definitely going to add a receiver next year, and I think you might get hit or miss production. So in a best ball situation, he's a small guy, and I know there's lots of receivers.
So I got here's a situation I'm in right now. So I've got Greg Dortch, and I've got Justin Ross. For those of you who forgot about Justin Ross, Clemson phenom as a freshman, just can't stay healthy, gets picked up as an undrafted free agent by the Kansas City Chiefs in another pretty ambiguous wide receiver room. Are you keeping Dortch, or are you taking that shot on Justin Ross?
I mean,
right? It's kind of gross.
It's gross, and Ross obviously has the higher ceiling out of this, so you're probably going to want to go with Ross, because Dortch. I mean, what's Dortch going to do? At best, he's going to be Braxton Berrios. Like,
okay, that's fair. All right.
And so you want to just
wanted to kind of throw a couple of
swing
names
for the
out there when you
fences,
talk
and
about, right?
if you strike out, it's no big deal. Cost you a Dortch. We got the Los Angeles Rams, and so they've had a very boring offseason. Their acquisitions this offseason were acquiring via trade Hunter Long when they traded Jalen Ramsey away. They also, as far as the draft, have added a lot of pieces. And so if you know what that coffee cup said and that hashtag, I'm not going to say it because this can be a kid's show, but F them picks has now been give me those picks. And so they acquired a lot of picks last year via trade, different moves. So their draft was an A-. Somehow they got a B for their offseason, even though they got rid of Ramsey, added Hunter Long, who, side note, looks like the guy. Remember the guy from We're the Millers, the kid?
Yes.
Looks like him, but like he went in the Captain America booth and got jacked up. That's Hunter Long. If you don't know what he looks like,
I like it.
He used to be he was from Boston College, went to Miami. Now he's traded over to LA. Steve Avila and their first pick in the second round, really good pick. I mean, they thought he could be a potential first round pick. Daniel Jeremiah was very high on him. They had Byron Young, Tennessee edge. That was pick 77. They thought it was a good pick, third rounder. Kobe Turner in the third round, defensive lineman. They got guard, edge, defensive lineman. Stetson Bennett in the fourth round was a little bit of a head scratcher. Nick Hampton, edge, fifth rounder. Warren McClendon, tackle. Then you have Davis Allen in the fifth. Puka Nacua in the fifth. You have Hodges Tomlinson from TCU, corner. Tavarius. I think he's a nephew of LaDainian Tomlinson. Ochon Mathis, edge. Zach Evans, running back. Ethan Evans, punter. Jason Taylor, safety. And Deshaun Johnson, D lineman. A- for their draft. Interesting team. They've fallen pretty quickly from fantasy graces. What are your thoughts here on Matthew Stafford, who really struggled last year?
That they need to get that offensive line meshing. That's the option. I mean, you still have one of the better receivers in the game in Cooper Kupp, and outside of that, you got 115 vacated targets. How does that go? Does he have, can Van Jefferson get up there to what we kind of hope a wide receiver coach's kid could do for us? But that offensive line is going to be the catalyst. And then the secondary piece to that is, can they get the run game going to just take the pressure off to where they can't just unleash the pass rush on every single play over and over and over again, which is what the issue was last season. There was no threat of the run early on. And when you couple that with an awful offensive line that can't communicate and can't block, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that's what we saw last season. The whole team just kind of fell apart. So they added some pieces to the offensive line. I think if they can figure out how to get them to mesh early on, that's good. But you're going to see the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season, like you typically do with newly reorganized offensive lines, you're going to see some time that it's going to take for them to mesh and actually start to communicate well and do a good job for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, this was a team that really they found themselves in third and long way too often, and they are not a good pass blocking team. Matthew Stafford also had some injuries, so he was pretty much a statue back there, and so they did end up having to shut him down for the season. But for fantasy purposes, he was awful last year, and I've seen some people really getting back in on him. And Stafford's a guy historically I've been a big fan of, and it's really hard to buy in on him if you look at his season last year. He doesn't have any rushing upside anymore. He had he wasn't he wasn't going to rush too much, but he would give you sometimes 15, 20, 25 yards a game, offer maybe a touchdown on top of 300 yards passing. Now you just got to rely on the passing, and then you got the concerns there with the turnovers because they've gone back up. Now we've seen the offensive line issues. Matthew Stafford, just for for dynasty purposes, he's someone, if you're looking for a QB2 in Superflex, are you targeting Stafford or are you going for other options?
No, I think I am. He's QB 29 price on ADP. So I always like to use startup ADP as kind of a starting point for trade offers. So who is he being drafted around? He's being drafted one spot. This is in startup ADP, one spot below Will Levis. If I can move Will Levis for Matthew Stafford in a situation where I'm trying to win this year and I need a second quarterback, I may be willing to do that, because as much as I like Will Levis, there is no guarantee that he's the guy for Tennessee. It's just not, right? When you look at other guys he's going below Trey Lance. If I can move Trey Lance for Matthew Stafford, again, in a situation where I am looking to try to win a championship, Trey Lance ain't helping me win shit this year. Matthew Stafford might, right? So at that point, I'm looking to move to obtain him just because of the price and some of the pieces that you can move to get him in a win now type situation.
And Brad, this is where we disagree. I might do the meme like, I mean, you're looking at Will Levis is a late first round pick. I am not sending a late first round pick for Matthew Stafford, and I feel like if that's what I'm shopping with, that I can get a lot better. I can come home from the grocery store with something better than Matthew Stafford. And it's really based on last year. Like I said, last year was really bad. And I don't know if it's going to get much better. You have the injury risk as well of him being shut down again if the back happens. I don't know. I'm very concerned. I do think this team could find themselves in shootouts, and I can see a path for this being a good move. But and I also don't know how much longer he's going to play. I mean, McVay could leave. Stafford could walk away anytime soon.
Yep. I mean, there are multiple trades that are going down for Matthew Stafford for a 24-second plus. If I go back, maybe you could see some 23s, but right now, just because of recency, you're looking at 24 seconds plus a piece. Matthew Stafford for James Cook straight up. And Matthew Stafford for a second and 2/3. Matthew Stafford, Michael Gallup for a 24 first. While I get it, the price to me is not crazy high. And look, Will Levis was anywhere between 110 to 202, depending on your draft. That's not super high draft capital right now. Who are you trading Will Levis for and getting anything? You know, Matthew Stafford could return to form, and you could have a top 12 quarterback on your hands. So I've got the belt and the trophy on my mind at this point, and that's what I'm trying to look at. And Will Levis isn't going to do that for me right now.
Yeah.
I get it. I get not wanting to do it also.
Well, I just think if I go to the store and I come back with Matthew Stafford, the wife's going to say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you could have got something better if you spent all that money. So we'll table that. You guys let us know what you think. Are you willing to spend a late first round pick? We'll say late first round pick on Matthew Stafford. And would you take him over Trey Lance right now? Because that's interesting conversation.
Will Levis just got traded for Sam Howell.
I'll take Sam Howell over Matthew Stafford right now.
Oh, come on. Get out of here with that.
I'm out. I'm just out on Stafford. The injuries, I'm just out.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Mike Clay is in. He's ranking him in at 20. Cam Akers, he's in and out of the doghouse. He looked really good at the Justin's in on Stafford as well. I'm a lone wolf on this one.
Yeah.
Cam Akers was in and out of the doghouse. And then at the end of the season last year, he looks really, really good. And so, yeah, I mean, QB 29, I'll take Stafford, but in the I'm going to take him for a late first round pick value. I just feel like you can trade for something better. But Cam Akers, what are your thoughts? I mean, we had him down the other day. Marcus Grant talked about him being a possible breakout candidate.
Sell, sell, sell. Look, I get it. Weeks 13 on, he had the most yards. He had the most touchdowns. He had like the third most missed tackles. He looked great. And he might have a good season this year. I just don't see a situation where the Los Angeles Rams, he's in the last year of his deal, his rookie deal. I don't see a situation where they pay this man. So right now he's coming off the board as the RB21. I'm looking to try to move because I think you could get more than RB21 price if you trade him right now because the hype is real. So I'm looking to move him. I know I'm going to eat my words this season. I do think he's going to have a decent season. Excuse me. He's going to be able to get the run going. He's going to look like himself, I believe, what we thought he was going to be coming out of Florida State, or what a bunch of us had kind of hoped that he was going to be before he suffered the Achilles and then found himself in the doghouse and all of these things. I just think his value has peaked, and now to me is the time to sell.
Yeah, now that his value's rebounded a little bit. I mean, last year, there were people that were pretty much give me anything, I'll give you Cam Akers. Like, I'm pretty sure I acquired Cam Akers for like a 301 in last year's draft. Like, people were just ready to just Baxter situation, kick him off the bridge. So I'll take advantage of it, but now is the time to sell, because if he does get hurt or something happens, Sonny Michel was re-signed by the team. I just think that he could be good this year. He doesn't have a lot of long-term value. So if you could move him for a James Cook, who have younger player, might have some more long-term value, or move him for a player with similar value and a pick, I think the long-term is not looking good for Cam Akers. What are your thoughts about the rest of the backfield? He's got Kyron Williams as the number 2 guy. I have Zach Evans, but I do think Sonny Michel throws a curveball in all this. Brad?
I don't know if he does or not. Sonny Michel's been on this Los Angeles Rams train before, and were we super excited or happy about it? I don't think so. So I don't think, while yes, he's going to get a little bit of work, I don't think he's really eating into anything. I personally like the cost of Zach Evans because I think he's a better athlete than Kyron Williams. I think he's a more explosive player than Kyron Williams. And I think he's probably a little bit cheaper than Kyron Williams, to be honest, especially when guys like Mike Clay are projecting Kyron Williams to be the number 2. So you can use that as the selling point to go and try to get Zach Evans cheap. And when we talk about Cam Akers in the last year of his deal, Zach Evans is a rookie, may find himself as a starting running back for the Los Angeles Rams with maybe a new quarterback and some other pieces. But we might be looking at quite a bit of volume for him moving into next season.
Yeah, and so to go into the receivers, Cooper Kupp is projected to have a monster season. The number 2 overall PPR receiver with 1,400 yards, 126 receptions, 7 touchdowns. I mean, that is a monster season for a guy coming off of an ACL injury. And so I don't put it past Cooper Kupp to go and surprise people. But Brad, what are your thoughts here? Do you think that's it's pretty high projection?
No, I don't think there's any reason he doesn't return to his normal, what we've grown to know Cooper Kupp as. And when I can turn around and move Jordan Addison for him straight up, again, if I'm looking to try to win a championship, that's the kind of move I'm looking to make. An unproven rookie, as much as I love Jordan Addison, unproven, not the alpha on his team by any chase of the imagination, quite frankly, could be the third option for the top dog in the wide receiver ranks in Cooper Kupp if he returns to form. So that's a move I'm looking to try to take. If I can see him move for just a bunch of junk, Antonio Gibson in 2 seconds, okay, sign me up, right? So all of these things I'm looking at saying, do I realize Cooper Kupp's going to give me 1 or 2 more years of elite production? Yes. But I'm willing to move off of some of these younger guys and some picks to go get him to go after a championship.
What are your thoughts about Van Jefferson? Jefferson also had an ACL injury. He had, last year was a really, really odd year for him. Had some other stuff going on. He's back. He didn't have an ACL injury last year, but he did miss some time. And then by the time he got back on the field, Matthew Stafford was shut down. So what are your thoughts about Jefferson, who moves into the number 2 role?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Again, he's a refined player. He's not this flashy guy, but he knows how to play football. Like I said earlier, he is the son of a wide receiver coach. It's in his blood. He understands how to play. So I do think he's going to be the second option here because there's really not anybody else there. We did see Ben Skowronek look okay when given opportunity, but all these other guys, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, all of 155.
But the question is, are you interested in Van Jefferson?
At the price, yeah, he's wide receiver 78 in Dynasty ADP, going around guys like Kayshon Boutte, not looking great. Going around guys like Adam Thielen, who's 33. Curtis Samuel, I like a little bit more, so I'd take Curtis Samuel over him. MVS, Puka Nacua, who is a player on this team that's really starting to get some hype. But I think Van Jefferson's that guy, and at the price, yes, I'm willing to put him on my squad.
Yeah, and those names that you mentioned are fourth-round picks or valued at fourth-round picks, late third-round picks. Yeah, I would take Puka Nacua over those guys. Him and Jefferson, I'll probably take Jefferson, but Nacua you can get a little bit later or just get him in your rookie draft. He does offer a little bit of rushing upside. He had 5 rushing touchdowns to go with 5 receiving touchdowns, and he's an interesting player. And I think, in this offense where they're going to be looking to find another piece, Nacua is someone that I would stash, in the late 4th round. I got a couple shares. Let's move on to the tight ends. Last year, Tyler Higbee was really good, especially in your PPR formats. Fell off a little bit at the end of the season, but he had a run there where he was really like a top 7, top 8 tight end.
Double-digit targets he was getting. It was crazy.
Cooper Kupp coming off of the injury. You got no more Allen Robinson there. Robert Woods is long gone. What are your thoughts about Higbee, especially in your PPR or tight end premium formats?
Yeah, if I'm holding and not going after one of these top 3, 4, 5 tight ends, he's definitely a late round target I'm looking at, because while I think there's a chance that Van Jefferson is the number 2 target on the team, it would not shock me if Tyler Higbee is that guy. It is the number 2.
Well, Mike Clay has him as the number 2 target.
Yep. Like you said, double-digit targets on a number of occasions early on in the season. So that's what you're looking for, is that upside, especially in tight end premium leagues where they're giving you a half a point extra or a full point extra PPR to the tight end position. It's a guy that can absolutely eat guys' lunch from a target perspective. So he is definitely a late round flyer at the tight end position that I'll say I am targeting in whether it be redraft leagues or dynasty startup leagues.
Yeah, and he's definitely someone that I'm targeting as well. All right, if you guys have any question about the Rams, let us know. Brad, who's next on there?
The Seattle Seahawks and the Geno Smith led Seattle Seahawks, who is, I don't know, you've got a fondness for him. Whatever.
Yeah, I do. And I appreciate everyone watching out there. We got a pretty good group. And a reminder, if this is your first time, hit that subscriber button. So Geno Smith got some additions to this team. Let's start out with the offseason. They got an A. They added Evan Brown, center, Devin Bush, linebacker, Draymond Jones, D lineman, Julian Love, safety. This was a defense that really got targeted last year as far as, if you had a quarterback playing against Seattle, you were pretty happy. So they did a lot to attack the defense here. They brought back Bobby Wagner, who's on their Mount Rushmore of players. They got Jaron Reed, who also is brought back, defensive lineman, former first-round pick for the Seahawks. And they had a bevy of draft picks. They got an A from Seattle, of course, they probably thought it was an A+. But PFF gave him an A. Devin Witherspoon, corner. Nice combination with their home run pick last year. He's a smaller corner, but he's feisty. He plays the ball well, and he actually makes plays. So you got 2 guys that are playmakers on defense. Then you got Jackson Smith and Jigba with their second pick. I think a lot of people were disappointed by this, but I think this is a move not only for now, but for the future. And the biggest beneficiary is Geno Smith. But I think it's nice for Jackson Smith and Jigba. He gets to come in, not have to be the first target, and he goes right in there in the slot, learns from one of the best slot receivers in the game and Tyler Lockett, and has DK Metcalf there to to really take some pressure off of him. Derek Hall, Auburn linebacker, edge. Zach Charbonnet, Brad's guy, another good running back. Anthony Bradford, guard. Cameron Young, defensive lineman. Mike Morris, edge. Olu Oluwatimi, center/guard from Michigan. Jarek Reed, safety, and Kenny McIntosh, running back, really a pass-catching specialist. So let's start off with Geno Smith. Last year was, the tennis Twitter handle was bodying Seattle last year. Everybody expected Seattle to straight up stink. And this team was pretty good. And it was really good on the back of Geno Smith, who led the NFL in passing as far as completion percentage. And he was a number 7 overall fantasy quarterback. And there were times where Geno Smith was just, he was not only just passing the ball, he's also rushing it a little bit. So, Brad, I know you're not as high on Geno Smith as I am, but I would target Geno Smith as someone that is a quarterback too. And he's younger than some of the other options that people look at. People think that, Geno Smith's it feels like he's been in the league for 30 years. He's a little younger. He's younger than Russell Wilson. And what's your so you're got a face right now? What's going on?
I was doing some looking while you were talking, expecting to just continue to body Geno and likely not give him the respect he deserves after the season that he had. But when I see trades like Geno for Rashad Penny, is that even real in a dynasty league? Geno Smith for Mac Jones and a first? I'm hoping that first is late, but Mac Jones and a late first for Geno, I'll take that. Especially when you're looking at a top 10 quarterback who added JSN this season and added Zach Charbonnet, and they just want to continue to put the points on the board. They were a hyper-efficient offense, and they added 2 really efficient guys. So I think I might be in on Geno.
There's nothing that says that Mac Jones has a longer career as a starter than Geno Smith. I know he's older, but Geno Smith, even if they both are starters all year this year, and both their wheels fall off, but Mac Jones he's not on a good track for a long NFL career right now as a starter, and Geno Smith just signed a contract.
They just paid Devontae Adams a 3-year, $33 million deal. I saw. I don't know if that was real or not, but it came on my phone.
It's real. Forgot to cover that in our major news section. Drew Lock, he's not going to be anything. So Geno Smith, I think we both agree, because of the value, because there's still people that they're not believing in Geno Smith, the value's still there. And don't get me wrong, I'm not spending 2 firsts for Geno Smith. But you talk about earlier, what we would try. I would take Geno Smith over Matthew Stafford all day. And I think they're about the same price. So let's move on to the running backs. This is where it gets really funky. Ken Walker, he was going as a top 3 dynasty running back before the NFL draft. Zach Charbonnet was projected to be the RB3 of this class. Those things collided, and now the Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker are losing their ADP. And let me ask you this. So is Ken Walker or Zach Charbonnet or both, are they becoming values?
100%. Kenneth Walker's still at RB8, right? He's ahead of Najee Harris. He's ahead of Josh Jacobs, ahead of a guy that I love in J.K. Dobbins. I still think he is probably not a quote-unquote value. But when I look at Zach Charbonnet, who's coming off his RB24, he's coming off behind Joe Mixon. He's coming off behind Aaron Jones. He's coming off behind Dameon Pierce. Coming off behind Cam Akers, who we just talked about may not have a starting job. I think he is a value right now. I think if I could move Cam Akers right now for Zach Charbonnet plus, which I know you can do because of this situation, I might do that. And you're going to look like a fool this year, quite possibly, but you may end up being the one laughing coming the 2024
Need
season.
to clarify something you just said. We did not say Cam Akers would not have a job this year.
No.
Brad's saying in the future, Cam Akers a free agent next year. We don't know what his free agency would look like. And Zach Charbonnet, he could not be a lead next year either.
Yep.
And for the foreseeable future. But we just don't know what Cam Akers is going to look like. And you can kind of sell off that hype. You could sell off the hype of like a Isaiah Pacheco, or you got a Rashad White and get Zach Charbonnet plus for either of those guys. But yeah, I think Charbonnet is a good player, and I think this offense is you're not going to have Ken Walker go out there and be he may not be an RB1 this year because Zach Charbonnet is there. I think Charbonnet does enough to where he's more involved in the passing game, which is odd because he's a big dude. But I think you see a combination of backs and what NFL teams are looking to do these days. Before you had Thunder and Lightning, you had the big guy and the little guy, and that worked out really well. Now NFL, they just want to have good running backs. And so now you have Ken Walker going in, and he's busting off, big runs. He's a tough physical runner. All right, we're going to get a break and get Zach Charbonnet out there. Okay, you're not going to get a break. And Zach Charbonnet goes out there. And so the Seattle Seahawks are really they're going to be a physical running team. And remember, they like physical runners over there. They had Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, Chris Carson. This is a team, and we've seen with Pete Carroll having two running backs in his past, Reggie Bush and Lendell White. Zach Charbonnet and Ken Walker both could be valuable, and Charbonnet could be the short yardage guy where he's going and getting the goal line touches in this offense. You saw it with Jamal Williams last year. Being a goal line back can be a valuable thing on a good offense.
Yeah, and the thing I'm looking at here, and Kenneth Walker still being the guy, getting that 224 projected carries from Mike Clay's projections. When you have a guy like Zach Charbonnet who can relieve you on a fair amount of carries, the efficiency for Kenneth Walker is going to stay pretty high, maybe even a little bit higher than what it was last year, because he's not the sole player in the backfield taking every bit of the carries. You're looking at he was about 4.7 carries through the back half of the season, 4.7 yards per carry on the back half of the season. You up that to 5 yards a carry on 225, 985 yards. That math doesn't work out. I think that is a very low projection, and you're looking at it from a perspective of he's not going to be very efficient. That's what, 4.4, 4.3 yards per carry? That's not enough. That's not enough. He's going to be a little bit higher than that. And I think that's something to keep in mind right now. Maybe you use these projections to help you say, you know what? Hey, look, Mike Clay thinks 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's a low-end RB2. When in reality, maybe he's an 1,100-yard rusher with 7 or 8 touchdowns. And now you're looking at a little bit different projection or final season finish.
The last point on the running backs, I'll just say this. Zach Charbonnet, the instant reaction for those people drafting on Sunday or Monday after the NFL draft, Charbonnet was dropping to the middle of the late second round. He's rebounded a little bit, and I think people are starting to get more comfortable with the fact that let's trust the talent over the situation. Also, draft capital. Like, everyone's like, draft capital over situation, draft capital over situation. He gets great draft capital, but it's a bad situation, so they're tanking him. And they're like, oh, but Devin A-Chain, he's 190 pounds, but got a great landing spot. Well, Dalvin Cook might go rain on that parade, but that's a whole nother show. Let's talk about DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We talked a little bit about Smith and Jigba already. Brad, you get Metcalf. I'll take Lockett. What do you think about his dynasty outlook?
Top 10. He's still top 10 dynasty wide receiver for me, even though he's coming off as wide receiver 13. So he's a value to me right now. I'm going to try to obtain him, especially after the addition of JSN. There's these value dips for him right now. he is the alpha in this offense. He still can take any catch to the house regardless. I know he was a little bit more of a short yardage guy last year, kind of used for moving the chains a little bit more, but he's the guy. He is crazy talented, and I'm buying the dip right now.
I'm gonna put you in a bind here. DK Metcalf or T. Higgins?
Metcalf.
Yeah,
Metcalf.
I think I got him one spot ahead of Higgins.
Higgins right now is wide receiver 9 and startup ADP.
Yeah, I think I have them either 8 and 9 or 8 and 10. Tyler Lockett is a player that I think he is a league-winning value, and I know JSN is going to eat into a little bit with him, but Tyler Lockett he's been one of the most consistent players after being one of the least consistent players. But when it comes down to it, this guy has not only does he have huge upside, but he has week-to-week consistency of a floor in your PPR and your half PPR formats. And I just love Lockett's value. So I don't know if you have any trade examples or ADP right now, but because of his age, because of JSN, he's really become a value, and he is the perfect wide receiver 3 to throw onto your team.
Yeah, there's a couple. So one I like, one I don't like, but I'll give you the first one. Would you rather have Tyler Lockett in a 24-second or Treylon Burks?
If it's an early second, then I'll think about it. I'm not as high on Burks, but I'll tell you right now, I saw the Dynasty price check I just did. I might just go get Treylon Burks and then trade him for more.
Okay. And then would you rather have Tyler Lockett or Michael Gallup and Kendre Miller?
Oof. Kendre Miller over Tyler Lockett.
The value may not be there. There are a ton of 4-for-4 trades in here that you might be able to sneak them in.
Tyler Lockett Dynasty price check coming tonight, because I just don't believe some of these values. I just don't think people are paying. Like Kendre Miller is like a 112, 201. I don't know. That's a lot for me. I thought Tyler Lockett's going late second round pick.
Tyler Lockett for Jerry Jeudy. Tyler Lockett and Rashee Rice for Jameson Williams.
Jamo.
That's 4 trades you would not take Tyler Lockett in.
Well, I guess I'm not gonna. I'm gonna enjoy the Lockett shares that I have, because a few years ago when I was doing my last ditch effort for a championship, I just traded a 3rd round pick for him, and I was able to get him. So I'm just gonna keep him. So nothing about tight ends. Let's move on to the Niners.
All right.
Those tight ends stink. They're not going to do much with JSN there. This is the big one. And Brock Purdy is the starter according to Mike Clay. Gives Trey Lance 2 starts, Sam Darnold 1. I really and I just, for Trey Lance's sake, was hoping he got traded this offseason. It did not happen. And now Trey Lance is the backup. I've heard stuff that Sam Darnold is overtaking him in camp. Yeah, RIP Noah Fant for sure. So what are your thoughts here about Brock Purdy? 2011, 3,200 yards, 23.
So depending on how you play Dynasty, I think he's a great option for your QB2 in a super flex league. And really, because the consistency that we saw out of Brock Purdy, it was basically 202, right? Dave and I talked about it almost every week. Oh, there's 202 again and again and again. And it just kept happening. He's the model of consistency. You can plug and not even think about it, right? Instead of, okay, well, how's do I want to play Sam Darnold this week? What about Desmond Ridder? What's his lineup look like? What's his matchup? Brock Purdy, you can get him fairly reasonable, right around probably those guys, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, that Kenny Pickett, that area, and he's just locked and loaded 202 because of the offense around him. Not necessarily because Brock Purdy is a phenomenal quarterback, but because he's just in an offense and surrounded with weapons that are just going to continue to make him successful. So I think the model of consistency makes him a perfect QB2 option for Superflex.
Yeah, so I'm going to combine some statements from the two recent guests. So Michael F. Florio said this is why he doesn't like Brock Purdy is because of how easy that offense is and how easy it makes things to the quarterback doesn't have to do a lot. But at the end of the day, if he's the quarterback doing that, the same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo, he's going to offer some production and some consistency as long as he's healthy. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo ever first of all, Brad, you asked this question. He never had 1,000-yard receiver. He had George Kittle get 1,000 yards over one season. But he never really had QB1 performances. But he was a consistent QB2 all the time. And Brock Purdy could be that guy as well. But Marcus Grant said it perfectly. Low-hanging fruit tastes just as good as the fruit at the top of the tree. And you don't have to work so hard for it. And Brock Purdy right now is a screaming value, especially in redraft and best ball. But he's also a good value in Dynasty. Once he gets announced as a starter, that value is going to go up. And you should take advantage of it now, especially if you have Trey Lance. But if you don't have Trey Lance, it's also another way where you can go get a tree fruit. Yeah. You can go get Sam Darnold as a free toss in as well if you're in those super flex leagues because he may have to start a couple weeks if Brock Purdy's not ready. Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell was one of those guys who had a whole lot of value. Bruni was all about Elijah Mitchell last year. Then Christian McCaffrey trade happened and completely tanked it. What are your thoughts about Elijah Mitchell? It's a pretty valuable handcuff.
He's a great handcuff because he's going to get all of the work if CMC, knock on wood, we don't want it to happen, but if he gets hurt, he's going to get all the carries. Now maybe TDP takes a lot of that receiving work, but we've seen Elijah Mitchell be very productive from a fantasy standpoint when given all of the opportunities. So I think he's a great handcuff to have, and I think there are going to be weeks that he's playable as well. In games that you think the 49ers may be well ahead and just looking to run the ball over and over again. He's a guy that he's fast. He works in that zone scheme perfectly, and he provides a huge amount of value.
Yeah, and, I know there's a lot of love in the streets for Jordan Mason last year. I think he's just so far buried that it's not worth a roster spot. But we'll see. The 49ers do kind of, burn through running backs. Let's go to the receivers. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 15. Last year, he was just, for me, a massive sell bust candidate. Do you think he bounces back this year, or what are your thoughts? They got him down for 44 rushes, 243 and 2, and then 62 receptions for 888. Michael Irvin would like that one. 5 touchdowns. But wide receiver 15.
No, I feel like 15's too high. Look, as fun as Deebo is for the offense and as good as he is for San Francisco to do what he can do, he's really only given us one season of production that we wanted from him. And he ain't the alpha. We're not going to talk about who I think the alpha is yet because we're going to get to him here in a second. But these numbers I feel like are pretty modest. I just don't know how those numbers get you to wide receiver 15 right now.
Yeah, I think there's so many other receivers that I feel much more confident in that range. We did our wide receiver ranking show. We had Jagger May on with us, and I'm pretty sure I was the lowest on Deebo Samuel, and I had him at like 30, 31. There's just so many guys that I'd much rather have than him. Not just his injury history, but the inconsistent play. And the way they use him, it's great. But they don't do that till the fantasy football, not the NFL playoffs. Yeah. So you're not seeing him rush the ball like he does, 10 carries against the Cowboys in the playoff game. That doesn't happen during the NFL season. So you don't get that value. So I feel like there's been, there's this idea that he's going to do all these things. And, when he only gets 7 or 8 touches in a game or 6 touches in a game, it doesn't result in the same kind of fantasy production that we had, seen in those playoff games. We both agree. Brandon Ayuk is the alpha. I think that, if he's getting, I don't think his ADP is this low, but if he's down there at 35, I'm scooping him up all day. He's let me see it.
28.
He's
going to smash that ADP. Dude,
yeah,
this is the season that you really see Brandon Ayuk on display. I'm planting it right now.
Yeah, as long as you can get good, consistent play from the quarterbacks, Ayuk has been good, and he is always open. This is a Deontay Johnson type of a player. He's a good route runner, and he offers some speed and athleticism after he catches the ball in an offense that really specializes in creating mismatches and space for these guys to create after the catch. And so Ayuk is a first-round pick, and people forget about him. I think he's an underrated player. I'm a huge fan. I got an argument with Chase Vernon last year about him. Ayuk versus Terry McLaurin. I feel like I won that so far, and I think this year I'm gonna double down, and we'll see. I'll have to make a bet with Chase, see if he comes on the show wearing a tiara and a tutu or something. Shout out to Trophy Smack, not a sponsor yet, but those are my guys. George Kittle last year, and Travis Kelce talked about this on his show. He said that George Kittle hurts himself because he's such a good blocker, and if he maybe would stop being such a good blocker, he'd get more targets. As a fantasy football manager that has him on the team, I felt that, because there's times where I'm like, this dude played 99% of the snaps, but he only ran routes on 47% of the plays, and he got 6 targets. Like, come on. Then the next week he gets 15 targets. And it's like, maddening. But at the end of the season, he destroyed. And he was one of the best tight ends in football again. And so what are your thoughts on George Kittle, TE5?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the top tight ends through the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I want to see him higher than 5, but because there's so many pieces around, and I think there's limited passing volume that we're going to see from Brock Purdy, just because you're not going to need to. I think that's about his ceiling.
Kittle or Goddard?
Tight end 5.
Kittle or Goddard?
Goddard.
Kittle or Waller?
Kittle.
Kittle or Pitts?
In Dynasty?
Yeah.
Pitts.
All right, and I didn't recap. So for the 49ers fans, I apologize. I didn't recap their offseason. They got a C grade for their free agency. Austin Bryant, edge. Chris Conley, receiver. Sam Darnold, quarterback. John Feliciano, center. He was on the Giants last year, played pretty well. Cleveland Farrell, edge. Zane Gonzalez, kicker. Javon Hargrave was the big ticket item. I absolutely love that move. I think they should get more than a C. You not only added one of the best defensive linemen to a defense that really is predicated off pass rush, really helps helps secondary. You took it away from the Eagles.
From Philly. Yep.
And the Eagles lost a lot of players, but a lot of people would tell you this was the best player on that defense last year. And now he's on the San Francisco 49ers, who are with the Eagles as the 2 top teams in the NFC. Then you have Miles Hartsfield, Isaiah Oliver, that's a safety and a corner, and then Matt Pryor, guard. And then as far as their draft, they got a C-. They got Jair Brown, who is the turnover king. That was his nickname. Safety, good safety out of Penn State.
Great.
And, he's definitely someone that they were a fan of over at Move the Sticks. Jake Moody, kicker in the 3rd round. He's good. Cameron Latou, tight end out of Alabama. Darrell Luter, corner. Robert Beal, edge. D. Winters, I really like that pick, linebacker. Braden Willis, tight end. Ronnie Bell, receiver. And then Jalen Graham, linebacker. Brad, anything before we go?
No, man, I'm good.
All right. Well, everybody, as always, and good luck this season.
Cheers.